Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual farm field trip. We are live today from Cornelius, Oregon at Forest Hills Farm. My name is Mariana and I'll be the moderator for today. Before we start our tour today, I wanted to go over a few logistics to make sure we have a great experience. We've muted everyone and everyone will remain muted throughout the tour so everyone can hear our tour guide clearly. If you have questions, you can send them to us using the chat feature. Please only type questions to us in the chat. This will help us see questions and ask as many as possible throughout the tour. It is now my pleasure to introduce our host and tour guide for today's virtual field trip, Anna Jesse. Take it away, Anna.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anna Jesse. I am a third and fifth generation farmer here in Cornelius, Oregon. I work on the farm that I grew up on. We grow 8 to 9 different crops every single year, and today we're going to talk about sweet corn. So sweet corn is 100% whole grain, similar to wheat or rice. It is grown for a multitude of different purposes and a multitude of different varieties of sweet corn. So you have white sweet corn, yellow sweet corn, bicolor sweet corn, and lots of different kinds of each of those. I can show you a little bit of the yellow sweet corn that we grow. You can see how yellow the kernels are. This sweet corn gets grown for a cannery, which is a processing facility in Forest Grove, Oregon. It gets dehydrated at that facility and shipped to Japan to go into corn chowder. And I will show you a little bit of that later. The corn chowder is a traditional Japanese breakfast food. We grow on a planting cycle. So every time you plant corn, it starts as just a little seed in the ground and it gets to be this tall by the time it's ready to harvest. For your reference, I'm about 5'7", so above 6 feet. Of the corn that gets harvested here, one of the most important things about harvesting is planting for this particular purpose that we're using it for. So when you plant, it's 60 to 100 days from the time you put the seed in the ground to when you pick the corn. We have a longer growing season here in Oregon, so we're allowed to plant over a period of 2 months to make sure that we can harvest all summer long or all fall. So basically when you get out of school, we're putting the seed in the ground, and right about the time you're going back, we're starting to harvest. And let's go this way and look at the harvester a little bit.
Anna, we do have one question. Richard's class wants to know, how long have you been working on the farm?
I've been working on the farm since I was 4 years old. I took a break when I went to college and then I came back. And since I've come back, it's been about 8 years. So this is our corn harvester. We work with another farm in the area. They actually come and harvest our corn for us. We do not have it. We all there's a few farmers here that all grow for the same cannery, and we work together to get it harvested, kind of in a co-op situation. So really just trying to collaborate with your neighbors to get the job done, which is very cool. Farming is very much about community and working with your neighbors. So this particular machine will drive through these tall corn stalks, and the corn stalks will come in through the header, which this is the header. So it'll get funneled in through here, up into the intake up there. It'll go through the machine. It'll separate this ear of corn from the large stalk that you saw. And then it will get fed out the back onto this conveyor belt and into this hopper. This hopper is very cool. It has a hydraulic arm right here. This allows the hopper, when it gets full, to dump So what we'll have is a large truck will come right up next to this while it's picking. So the picker never stops. The truck actually moves with the picker. And this will dump into the bed of the truck. And then this will keep going and fill up again. And another truck will come back behind and fill and wait till it's full and pick up another load. When the load gets taken out of the field, it gets driven directly to the cannery. For what we're doing with it, the dehydration, it has to be processed at the cannery within 24 hours of harvesting it. So our harvest schedule is very specific, and we have to wait until the cannery calls us and tells us, hey, we can take 2 loads or 3 loads, or we can take 15 loads. It just depends on the day.
We have another question. How much corn do you grow in 1 year?
That depends on the year. This year we have about 300 acres of corn. So tonnage wise, it varies. And the weight, don't have a good answer for that off the top of my head, but it's pretty heavy. After the corn is harvested, you can see a little bit over here, there's a tractor. Then you want to show them the ground too. So this is what we call chop. Tractor is actually chopping up the left stalks, leaving it on the ground. And when this field is fully harvested, we will come back in with a large disc ripper and work it all back into the ground. And that will provide nutrients for the soil and help prep the ground for a new crop next year. This particular field will not have corn in it next year. That's another important part. Corn has to be planted. It's a every year crop. It doesn't overwinter and grow new corn next year. So every year you have to plant new seed to get your crop. And an important part of taking care of the soil is making sure that you're rotating the crops, because every crop needs different nutrients out of the soil in order to grow healthy and also keep the soil healthy as well. Another thing sweet corn really needs to grow is water. And in this field, we use a system called a linear. This linear, you're looking at the portion of the field that's already harvested, but this linear travels. It has a motor and it goes back and forth in a straight line. And each of those drop down nozzles you see is a sprinkler head, and it waters the corn from there. And so probably this year we didn't have a lot of rain, so it probably went back and forth across this field 5 or 6 times, each time putting on about an inch of water to the soil.
We do have a question. Can you eat the corn straight away after harvest?
You can, but it usually is better cooked. Yes, but you can. It is edible. And you can use this corn. If I wanted to, I could dry this corn kernel. So you can see here. Here's the corn. You might have had a corn out of a can before, but here's one corn kernel. This you can dry and it can become seed for next year. Very high in sugar. A lot of corn, you'll see this is sweet corn. It's primarily used for human consumption. But a lot of the corn you'll see grown other places is grown for silage, which is for animal feed. So cows and pigs and chickens, a lot of that corn will be used for that. There's also corn that is grown for biofuel. So to power cars as an alternative fuel source to gas or diesel. Corn has been grown, I think the earliest was they have record is 7,000 years ago. They have record of corn being grown by Native Americans in South America. And today it's grown on every continent except for Antarctica. Does anyone have any other questions?
We do have a few more. How many acres do you have on your farm, and how big is an acre?
Oh, that's a good one. So it's about the size of a football field, an acre is. We have about 2,000 acres on our farm. This year, about 300 of it is in corn.
Does your family own the farm?
We also grow,
How long has your family owned?
yes, my family owns the farm. We have, my dad owns this farm. He started here in 1978. So almost 40 years.
Green stuff is on the corn.
So that is the corn stalk. That's its protectant. And it's what grows all around it, encases it, and allows the seed, the kernels and stuff to grow in the middle. And then this is corn stalk. When the corn throws up on the top of the stalk a tassel, there's pollen in the tassel. Some of the pollen gets caught in the silk, but for every kernel on the corn cob, there's a line of silk. And that's just a part of the plant. But all of this will be good biomass for putting back into the soil. Corn is very water intensive. You have to water it a lot. Nutritively, it is not super intensive. You just want to make sure there's enough nitrogen in the soil, which is the primary nutrient that it uses to grow every year. So sun and water and nitrogen pretty much gets you going.
We do have another question. Can you make popcorn out of this corn?
This is not popcorn, so no. There is a particular variety of corn, a strain of varieties of corn that are grown just for making popcorn. Those are primarily grown in the southeast region of the United States.
What do you do with the husk when you're done with the corn?
It's put back out onto the field. This big tractor over here that I pointed out earlier is actually going through and chopping up the rest of the stalk and the husks on the ground. We will let that until dry, and then we will come back through with a tractor in October and work all of that underneath the ground. So we use an implement on the tractor that turns the soil and incorporates it back into the soil, because all of the husk will break down and then become nutrients for the soil in the soil. Always put synthetic nutrients back onto the ground. Synthetic nutrients would be fertilizers that you would go buy from the store. A lot of those fertilizers are from minerals or mining, aren't naturally coming from biomass sources. This corn is biomass. If you were to work it back into the soil, it would break down naturally. It's an organic material and then become nutrients back for other things. So it's a good recycling system.
We have a few other questions. How much corn, do you know how much corn Oregon produces, and is it a major crop in Oregon?
It is a major crop in Oregon. There's a lot of it produced. Like I said, a lot of it is produced for silage, for feed, for animals. I'm not sure at the total production number. I would have to look that up. But there is a fair amount of it grown. And just so you guys can see, this is what our corn goes into. So it is a dehydrated soup that you add water or milk to, and then it rehydrates, which you might have seen. If you've ever had mac and cheese and you put milk into your orange powder and it rehydrates, that's like this, but it's not milk that you're rehydrating, it's corn. And it comes in little packets like this. Some of this corn too gets dehydrated and put into ramen as well. If you've had like a cup of noodles or a pack of top ramen and you see a corn kernel in that, that could very well be coming from this area and a dehydrated corn kernel.
Mrs. Davis' class would like to know, what made your family choose to grow sweet corn?
So we grow 7 to 9 different crops in a given year. And as I said earlier, it's very important to rotate your crops to best for soil health and to do best land management practices. So corn is one, it pays well. Two, it works rotationally for the soil health. And three, it works time-wise with the other crops we have to harvest. Our harvest season starts in June. We start harvesting black raspberries, then we harvest blueberries, then we start harvesting grass seed, clover seed, wheat, and then we come to corn, and then we also grow wine grapes and a few other things depending on the year. And having a good cycle so that you can keep busy all summer but not be too busy at one time is important for making logistically making the farm flow.
There are a lot of kids who would like to know if you grow and raise any animals on your farm.
I do not. No animals for us. We are a crop farm only.
And then there is a class who would like to know how do you keep the bugs away from the crops?
Well, corn doesn't have a lot of predators here in the valley. Uh, Everywhere you go that you were to, let's say you were to grow sweet corn in every state in the United States, every state would have a different kind of bug that might be interested in it or not interested in it. And so here we don't have a lot of predators for sweet corn. And the ones that we do, this will get treated with a particular pesticide maybe once early in the season to protect it while it's young and still just new to growing. And then after that, the husk helps protect it. And the seed is also treated. So the seed that goes into the ground is treated with nutrients and other materials to make sure that it's resilient when it starts to grow. So it's kind of a protectant. It has its armor when it goes into the soil.
A class would like to know how many people work on your farm.
We have 30 people working on our farm year round. They do all kinds of jobs from running a harvester or driving a truck or doing irrigation to picking blueberries or pruning grapes and blueberries to making pesticide applications. There's many, many jobs that need to be done, so we need lots of hands.
I have a question. Does it require a lot of sun for the sweet corn to grow?
Yes, it does. It does require a lot of sun. So on a cooler year, it will still, in order to make the corn sweeter, the more sun that is there, the more sugars that will develop within the corn. So a sugar in corn, they call that the Brix level. And that is what they use to measure if it's ready to be picked or not. So they'll come out and they'll look at the corn and they'll take the kernels that I showed you and they'll put them in a machine and they'll test the level of sugar in the corn kernel. And when it's got the right amount of sugar, then you're allowed to go in and harvest. So sugars are very important.
Do deer and or elk bother your crops?
No, not in our area, not corn. The corn seems to be okay. Our grapes do get some damage from deer, but not a lot. We get a lot of bird damage. Birds like to get into things. But the corn is pretty resilient. It's one of those that doesn't have a lot of predators out here trying to get after it. If you were in Montana, where they have more bears, or if you were growing corn in an area where you have more wilderness around and there's more bear presence, then you'll see bears coming into the cornfield to eat the corn because they can smell the sugars and that's what they like.
Mrs. Petrick's class would like to know what your job is on the farm.
I manage the farm and all of the people on the farm. So my job is to make sure that we have a plan for planting for the next year, that we're looking ahead at multiple years. I pay special attention to our soil health. We do a lot of work in our green spaces because you farm your land that's farmable, but you also need to take care of your land that is, for the for the birds and the bees in your habitat spaces too. Both of them need to be healthy for them to operate correctly. So we look at the whole picture and try and make sure that everything can operate smoothly. And some days I get to do the fun stuff like getting a tractor, but that's not very often anymore.
We have a question from Mrs. Sales class. They want to know if you know how many gallons of water it takes to water all of the corn.
I do not off the top of my head know that, but I can get that answer for you. A lot of gallons of water. So just for some reference to give you a number, the linear over here that I pointed out before that does the water, the pump that's pumping into that is pumping about 300 gallons per minute when it's running. So each set, a set is how long, there's 4 sets in this particular field. So it'll go a distance and that's one set, and then you'll change it and it'll go another distance and that's another set. Each set in this field runs for 12 hours at 300 gallons per minute. A lot of water.
And it's time for our last question. They would like to know if you do tours in person.
Yes, we do. We are happy to.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna, for taking the time to talk with students about growing sweet corn. And thank you to all the students in classrooms for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.